Good morning. So you got a little baggie with some oatmeal and some oatmeal and Kevin? Will you hand me that thing and marbles? And we'll talk about that in a little bit. We had a great day yesterday. It was wonderful being with this group of people. And if you don't know me, I am the much younger brother of Dan Sessions. We talked yesterday about a woman who had a hard life. My guess is she's had a harder life than any of you. And her name was Naomi. So hard that she changed her name to Bitter. She had a hard life. Now, it ended up great because through that bloodline came, through her daughter-in-law's bloodline came Jesus. And so, but it was not an easy life. And then we talked about Gideon. And he was a guy, we find him in a hole in the ground, a wine press where they would get down there, and the reason he was down there because there were enemies, and they would come and steal whatever you were doing. And so that's Gideon, and he's this guy who says, I don't even really believe, God, that you're on my side anymore. God works in his life, and he becomes a general, and he had an army of 32,000, and God whittled him down to 300, and then he becomes this faithful guy. He didn't let what was going on in his life stop him. It wasn't his fault. The Midianites came and stole everything, and it wasn't his fault. He was just caught in the circumstances. And all of us get caught in life's circumstances. We just do. Some of it's our own making. You know, some of it's not our own making, but we get caught in it. And he was just faithful. And at one point, all the faith he had. Now, he becomes a general and attacks the Midianites and has a great victory. That's what he's known for. How he started in that wine press, the only faith he had was enough to cook one meal. Now, God took that and trained him and taught him. And so I had some more to say about Gideon, but we're not going to do it. We'll move on. But it says that Gideon cried out. See, God doesn't mind if we cry out and we're not happy. You don't cry out because you're happy. You know, your baby doesn't cry out because he's happy. He cries out because he's hungry or tired, right? Or needs to be changed or spoiled. Pick your poison. He's one of those. Yeah, that's what. And so, but God doesn't mind if we cry out because that's honest. And he says, Second Chronicles talks about that. But what are we going to do is we're going to talk about a young guy named John Mark. And this is one cool dude. And I want to remind you that we're talking about three things with people who were here yesterday. I want you to think about the dream you have for your family. Not what it was, your new dream for your family. What is your dream for your family? I got 3 granddaughters, and I have dreams for them. I have 2 sons and wives, and you know, and I'm blessed with a family, and I have dreams for them. But you know, really, the only dream I have for them now is that we will be together in heaven. It's really the only dream I have for them now. They're making their way. They've gone to college and done all that stuff, and they got, you know, they're making their way in life. But all I want really is to have, I want them to go, I want to be in heaven with them. And I want my grandchildren to be safe, happy, and I want a relationship with them. That's what God wants with us. He wants us to be safe. He wants us to be happy, and He wants to have a relationship with us. That's why the Bible's written, so we'll be safe, we can learn to be happy, and we can have a relationship with God. Now, we're going to talk about John Mark. John Mark, well, we'll just watch the video. Huh? Of John Mark? Okay. Well, then go to Acts chapter 12. I got it written down. John Mark was a teenager. Now, for some of you parents, that strikes fear in your heart. Oh, no, I'm not a teenager. John Mark was a teenager, and his mother was a leader in the church in Jerusalem, and they had a house, and disciples would meet there. And it says in chapter 20, verse 25 of Acts 12, when Barnabas and Saul had finished their mission, they returned from Jerusalem, taking with them John, also called Mark. Now, think about being a teenager who loves God, who wants to be like Jesus, and Paul and Barnabas, so at this time, Paul and Barnabas were the two main characters, besides Peter, two main characters in the book of Acts, but they were the leaders of the church. Barnabas, this is before Paul became the leader, Barnabas went and got him and introduced Paul to other Christians, and so they're here, and John Mark is the guy, and they say, we want to take you with us. Now, if you're 15 years old, and the leaders of this church, these two heroes in the faith, come to you and say, you want to go on a missionary journey with us? We choose you. How would you feel? How would you feel? Huh? Important? What else? Special? Yeah. I'd be like, yeah. I'm glad you recognized my abilities. I mean, I don't know about you, but most 15-year boys I know are pretty prideful guys. And this kid grew up with some money. He grew up with an influential mom. And so they take him with them. Now, look at chapter 13. Chapter 13, verse 13. From Paphos, Paul and his companions sailed to Perga, in Pamphylia, where John left them to return to Jerusalem. Ruh-roh. Something's happened. John Mark, another translation says he deserted them. So you're 15 or 16 years old, and if you've read much about any of Paul's missionary journeys, it was not 5-star hotels. It was bad. It was dangerous. They got stoned, all kinds of stuff. And so John Mark decides, this isn't for me. Or I need to go back home, or I'm home. I don't know what he thought, but he kind of snuck on out and left. Look at chapter 15, verse 36. This is called a spiritual earthquake. Sometime later, Paul said to Barnabas, let's go back and visit the believers in all the towns where we preached the word of the Lord and see how they're doing. You got another verse there? Can you do 37? Barnabas wanted to take John, also called Mark, with them. Next. You do 38. But Paul did not think it wise to take him because he had deserted. Boy, what a bad thing to have hung around your neck. John Mark is a deserter. You know, you get a guy in the army who's a deserter, he's in trouble. He did not think it wise because he deserted in Pamphylia and had not continued with them in the work. They had such a sharp disagreement that they parted company. Barnabas took Mark and sailed for Cyprus. Truth of the matter is, after this, we don't hear much about Barnabas. He's out doing God's work, but we don't hear much about it. Think about the spiritual earthquake that caused. You got this 15, 16-year-old kid, we don't know exactly how old he was, and he deserts them. And Paul says, we're not going to take him back. It's too dangerous. We needed him to help us. He had to help us. You know, whatever he did, carried stuff or whatever, he cooked for him. I don't know what he did, but we got to do something. We can't take him. We got to take somebody. We're going to take somebody else. Let's take somebody else. Well, we're not taking him. And these two giants of the faith, these two men who were the most famous missionaries in the Bible, got so crossways with each other. And they said, well, Barnabas said, I'm going to take him. And Paul said, I'm not. How would you like that hung around your neck as a teenager? This is a big mistake for him. I bet you if we had the courage and the time and everybody got to stand up and give a testimony of the biggest mistake they made in their life, that would not be a happy time. If we would be embarrassed and sad, and we'd be crying and hurt and worried about it, because the problem is we hold on to that stuff. We hold on to the big mistakes. And the big mistakes are like, oh gosh, I did this when I was 17, or I made this stupid decision when I was 35, or you know, I got into this situation when I was 26. You know, and those things stay with us. And when they stay with us, what they do is they hurt our dreams. Because we can't dream clearly if that kind of stuff is still hanging on us. And so John Mark goes back home. I wonder what he said when he went back home. John Mark, how you doing? I hadn't seen you. Weren't you with Paul and Barnabas? Did they come back too? Well, no, they didn't come back. But I felt the need to come back, and maybe he just started crying and said, oh, I deserted. I don't know what he did. But can you imagine being 15 or 16 years old and for the rest of your life trying to live that down? Because it was such a public mistake. He wrote the first gospel. That's John Mark. The book of Mark was the first gospel written. What scholars think is the other gospels were written from the book of Mark. Because if you look at Mark, it's heavy, heavy, heavy on just the stories of Jesus. And so, the gospel of Matthew was written to the Jews. But John Mark wrote the first gospel. That's what scholars think. And then Paul gets put in prison at the end of his life. And who does he call for? John Mark. Send Mark to me. He is beneficial. Now, Paul had to do some forgiving, but John Mark didn't let his mistake, big mistake, public mistake, he didn't let that stop him from being who he was supposed to be. And he wrote the book of Mark. And he was a friend of Paul's to the very end. Quit letting your mistakes, your past sins, your past situations, quit letting that paralyze you. You know what? Some of us, this is me. I'll be thinking about something I did when I was 30, which is like 130 years ago, long time. I'll be thinking about something I did, and I think, that was so stupid. But at 30, it wasn't stupid. At 30, it was my best thinking, that's what it was, because that's all I knew. See, this is real important. You know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. That's why you get advice from older people. You know what you know. Let me tell you something, girls, boys, if you're 15, 16, 13, you know what you know. And all your friends know about the same as you do. They might know a little bit more, a little bit less, but about the same as you do. But you don't know what you don't know. Now, other people know what you don't know because they made the same stinking mistakes as you're thinking about making. You know what you know. You don't know what you don't know. John Mark was able, watch this, to forgive himself. Yeah. Forgive himself. What do you need to forgive yourself for? Maybe you've made horrendous decisions. And really bad things happened in your life, and you caused bad things to happen to other people. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But you need to forgive yourself. Well, how can I? Because God forgives you. See, if we don't feel forgiven, it's not because it's us. It's not because it's God. He's forgiven us. Not only has He forgiven us once, He forgives us every day. Every hour of every day. The blood of Jesus continually cleanses us. That means it over and over and over and over again. Here's who we are. We get to heaven. Name, Neil Sessions, Sonny. I'm a junior. I lived in Dalton, Georgia. Okay. Okay, I got you. Let's see. You're good. Come on in. No, God, I don't think you understand. Do you really know who I am? Do you really know what I've done? Do you really know the evil thoughts that have coursed through my mind and the evil deeds? And God says, I don't have any of those down for you. What I have is a big red stain. And that's the blood of my son. Quit blaming yourself for being stupid when you were 16. Join the club. All of us are. At 21 and 25 and 30. And forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. And if you're having a hard time, that's when you sit down and talk to somebody about it. See, what we do is we carry all that around. And we don't talk to anybody about it. And so we feel guilty. And we think, well, boy, if they knew what I was thinking or what I did. No, forgive yourself. And if you can't, that's when you need help with somebody that loves you. And if you need professional help, good, go get some. But I'm saying forgive yourself. John Mark was able to forgive himself for causing a rift in the church. for causing two grown men, spiritual men, to divide. Don't you know that every time every time somebody mentioned the name Paul or Barnabas, can you imagine how he felt the first time he saw Paul afterwards? Paul comes back through town. Barnabas, you going tonight? No, I don't think I am, because Paul's going to be there, and I don't know. Can you imagine what that was like? Forgive yourself, okay? Kevin, I need some water for my experiment here. This is science class. I want to say about John Mark is it took him a whole lifetime to get back to where he was dealing with Paul and taking care of him. Guys, it might take us a lifetime to live something down, not to other people, to live something down in our minds, to forgive ourselves. Because some of us have to forgive ourselves over and over and over again. Now, John Mark was able, thank you, Kevin. I'm good. John Mark was able to forgive himself. And finally, he was able to get back. Don't you know he dreamed of Paul riding him, sent it by camel, riding him and saying, send John Mark, writing when he wrote Timothy, or Titus, I forgot which, send John Mark. Don't you know that when John Mark went back to him, how that felt? That he could go back and serve him again. Gosh, that had to feel good. Delayed dream is what John Mark had. Let me tell you about a delayed dream I had. And I want you to think about now my family, myself, the church. What are my new dreams for my family, for myself, and for the church? I was 12 or 13 years old. I don't quite remember. And we were in Dalton, Georgia, and there was a little Church of Christ called the Underwood Street Church of Christ. And that's where me and my mama was converted when I was 12 years old. She was not a churchgoer. She was a pagan and tough lady, but she got real sick and started reading the Bible and called the preacher over to baptize her. She was ready. And once she became, it was no joke. It was, every time the doors are open, it was no joke. And so I'm sitting there one night on a Sunday night, and this guy comes, and he's from India. And he's not Indian, he's a missionary. He was a missionary in India. And he'd been to Calcutta. And he said, now I'm 12 or 13 years old, I'm sitting here. I don't hardly know where Atlanta is, okay? Atlanta's a long way. But India, it might as well be Mars. I didn't. So he says, what happens every morning in Calcutta? They have men come through with big carts. And they load all the people who died that night into those carts. What? And I sat there, and here's the thought, and it's as clear to me today as it was then. Why am I here and not there? Why did God put me here and not there? There must be a reason. He's got me here for some reason. And I went about my life, went to preaching school, went to graduate school, uh, started a church. We started camp. We did chemical recovery things, and all that it's really, really good. But in my mind, I was restless about India because I thought it just struck me, those. It struck me. So I thought, what am I supposed to do with that? I can't do anything with that. That's so far beyond who I am and what I just. And so I met a lady named Miss Molly. If you ever get a chance to know Miss Molly, she is a piece of work. She is something. She is the Apostle Paul. That's who she is. And so she said, she walked up to me in church. She said, "Give me $50. I need $50." I said, "Okay. First of all, you got the money. Now what are we doing with it?" She says, "There's some orphans over there who don't have enough milk. Orphan girls." Now, I've got 3 granddaughters at this time. And I'm sitting there thinking about my granddaughters who don't have enough milk. I thought, And all these girls were HIV positive. Thinking about, do you think you're on the lowest rung of the rung if you're an Indian orphan with HIV? You can't get much more needy than that. And so I said, "Molly, what are we going to do next month? Or the next month? We're going to need, right? We're going to need." And she said, I said, "Give me the number. I want to talk to them." So I start talking and communicating, and we come up with, let's buy some cows. So we bought some cows. It cost us $12,500. So I called a guy, a kid who had gone through camp and become a successful businessman, and I said, he just had adopted a little girl, and her name is Georgia. And I said, "John, I need some money from you for some orphans in India who are HIV and don't have enough milk to drink." He said, "How much do you need?" I said, "I need $11,500. He said, "You got it." So that started it. Now, I didn't have $11,500 to give, or I'd have given it. But I knew he did. And so we started there. Now, fast forward, that's been, I think, 8 years, 7 years. And we've had cows, and they've had babies, and and we sell some of the cows, but these girls get a lot of protein because they needed the protein. Now, the orphanage has changed, and it's no longer for HIV positive girls. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to build a couple of chicken coops and have about 40 chickens. Good. Because you know what else the girls need? They need eggs because of the protein. A lot of them are vegetarian, but they'll eat, they eat the eggs. They won't eat the meat. And so that's what it's taken 8 years. But it took 50 years, about 50 years for that dream to be renewed in me. And now I'm getting a chance to live it out. You know what I've done? The only smart thing I've done in a long time, I've got 4 women in their 40s who are my partners. And they're slowly taking over what I'm doing because I'm an old man. And when I die, I don't want this to die with me. What dream do you have that God would do with you? It doesn't have to be some big spiritual dream. I want to run a marathon. Now, count me out on that one. That would have to be supernatural. Yeah, But what is it? What I'm trying to do is to rebuild our dreams in this church, in our families, and in ourselves. Now, okay, this is the church. There are two kinds of fellowship in church. This is where the church comes together. Here's the church building, and the church comes together, and they all, like we are today. And what happens is we touch. Just a little bit. How you doing? How things going? What about them Bulldogs? I'm a Georgia fan. And so we touch this much, but then when the service is over, we all go our separate ways. That doesn't work. Or I'm measuring precisely. Okay? Put too much water in there. This is oatmeal. Now, I tell you what to do. When you get home, cook you some oatmeal and try to pick out the different pieces of oat. Can't do it because it's a different fellowship than this fellowship. The oats fellowship is we're all glommed together and we're one body. By this shall all men know that you're my disciples if you've got the name Church of Christ in your title. Oh, no. By this shall all men know that you're my disciples if you make sure that everybody's baptized. Yeah. By this shall all men know you're my disciples if you do some good. Nah. You want to know how people in Chattanooga and all the surrounding areas will know that you're disciples of Jesus? If you love each other. If you love each other. When I was growing up in this Underwood Street Church of Christ, and I think about this, I didn't know anything to do. I was about 12, 13 years old. And we had a guy there, and all of his teeth were rotten from the gum down. And it hurt him all the time. He worked, and his wife worked, and they didn't make much money. And, back, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, dentistry wasn't like it is today. But I thought, what if we had passed the hat for him and told him to go get his teeth fixed so that it wouldn't hurt every time he ate? That would have made sense to me. But I didn't think that way, and we didn't think that way. And I'm not talking about, I'm just using that as an example. What I'm saying is how the church will grow. In the first century, it grew not by promotion, but it grew by attraction. They saw in Corinth, for instance, in Corinth, there was a place where they would come and put babies with physical deformities and leave them. Leave them. And the Christians would come behind and take those babies and raise them. You think that made a difference in people's lives? Yeah, when they saw that. And it didn't make a difference in everybody's life. It made a difference in open people's lives. I've gone too long, hadn't I? But what I'm telling you is this, brothers and sisters, dream about your church being so in love with each other and so in love with Jesus that people say, I want that. Do you know what people are looking for? To belong, to be loved, to be a part, to be heard. That's what everybody's. I'm looking for that. You're looking for that. Sometimes I get mad in the church I go to because they don't listen to me like I think they ought to. I got opinions. My opinions have opinions. Because we all want to be heard. I want you to rebuild and renew your dreams about who you are and how God's going to use you for the rest of your life. And how God is going to take and love and protect your family. And how God is going to take and love and protect His church. Thank you so much for letting me come. It's been great for me, great to be with my brother and my niece and, my family. It's been a blessing. So God bless you. Thank you very much.